Hello, fellow runners. My name is Doug, and I want to dedicate my first YouTube video as a tribute to the New Balance 990 line of running shoes. It's been 40 years from 1982 to the present day of 2022 that this line of shoes has been out. And in my opinion, as a fan of stability running shoes and somebody who's been in and out of these shoes for a number of years, um, wanted to say I think it's the greatest continuous line of running shoes ever. I know there's probably some that other people would think of. The Nike Pegasus has been a very long run, almost as long. I think these started in '82, and the Pegasus, which I did have a pair of the original ones, were in 1983. There might be other ones that have longer runs, but for me, I wanted to give a tribute to these because they really are a special shoe. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the history of the shoe, and I'm going to bring all of this to you from my personal perspective rather than, a bunch of facts from just research. So there's some things from research, some things from just my personal experience, and then, get into, the different models and how they've gone over the years. My personal experiences with the shoe, some things about the features and why I think these shoes are great. Maybe where they could go in the future, and that you can still buy these today. So I do have three examples here. I have the 990, the originals, which are really the bring back. These aren't really from 1982, but New Balance does bring these back every few years and sells them on their website. And I did find a pair of these a couple of years ago, so it's really great to have a pair. I also have the 993s, which is more in the time frame of the late 2000s, just before 2010. But these are on sale today. As far as last time I looked at the New Balance website, they are on sale on the website as well as in the New Balance factory stores. That's where I bought these. And then the current shoe, which is the New Balance 990 V5, which is the current shoe that's being sold in stores, and you can get it on the New Balance website. In 1982, these came out. They are very famous for being the first $100 running shoe, first $100 sneaker, I think, of any type that was in regular production. Which was a big deal. Most of running shoes and other athletic shoes at the time were more in the, for a good pair of running shoes is $50 to $75. So bumping up to $100 was quite a bit. I was a young teenage runner at the time. I was not able to afford these shoes. I ran in New Balance 420s, which were look similar in shape and everything, but were a blue in color and didn't have all the extra stability features that the 990s had. Up until this time, the running shoe industry was very focused. It's really the running boom was really taking off in the early 80s. And most of the shoes, the biggest thing was the use of ethyl vinyl acetate, which is EVA, in the midsole, which these use, and many running shoes today still use EVA as the primary type of foam. And the whole thing was to start getting more cushioning. So it was a lot of the running shoes at the time were very focused on getting more cushioning in the shoe. And the 990 was one of the first shoes to kind of recognize that a lot of runners can benefit from both cushioning as well as features that maintain stability and protect runners from injury because of things like overpronation. And so this was one of the first shoes to incorporate that. There was a whole bunch of shoes that came right after that. The Brooks Chariot comes to mind, which is one of the first shoes. They used something called the diagonal roll bar, which I think is kind of a predecessor of a medial post in the shoe. And they used the Saucony Shadow, was another popular shoe at the time, came out a few years later. But really what they did in the change was moved a little bit. A lot of shoes are curve lasted, so they kind of curve because of people with higher arches. Your foot kind of tend to have that shape that had a little curve to it, and they kind of cut out of this section These straight had a little. You can see they have a little curve to them, but they, it's I think what they call semi-curved. Nice wide base, which was important for stability. And then they would also incorporate things like one of the things with these shoes was this really substantial heel counter, both going on big on the medial side, but also on the anterior side, and then dual density foam to provide what I think is one of the most important things about stability running shoe is kind of balancing the midsole, the right level of cushioning versus firm enough that it's still a stable ride, because that's really your foundation. And so they are able to do that with this dual density midsole, no medial posting. They used a very similar approach to. I also have a pair of more modern Brooks Adrenaline that uses guide rails, and very similar approach to what the original 990 had. These shoes are great to run in. Like I said, I didn't have them when I was starting running, but I did run in these a few times, and they do have a very good stable ride. I think they just about got it right back in 1982 as a stability running shoe. And a lot of shoes, not only did the 990 series go off from there, but a number of stability running shoes kind of got their start from the success of this shoe. And this has been the flagship shoe for New Balance for a number of years. It no longer is, but it has been for a long time. So from the 990, they moved up to the 995 in the mid 80s, and then they started. The numbering scheme is kind of interesting. They've always used numbering schemes, and they started with the 990, went to the 995, then they decided to start incrementing by one, so they went to the 996. The 996 was the first shoe to have an end cap midsole, which is 993s. You can see this, which is a polyurethane wrap around the EVA, and that provides stability in the rear and midfoot, as well as makes it a little bit of firmer ride, and also adds a lot to durability. And it's very similar to the 574. So I don't have pictures of all these, but I can kind of walk through them. The 997 came out in the early 90s. That was my first pair of the 990 series, and they had end cap that was very similar to these 993s. A full wrap around. It looked very, very similar. And in all the years since then, you kind of have that same look and that end cap, which was kind of a fundamental part of the shoe. The 998 was basically looked a lot like the 997s, but incorporated the first shoes to incorporate absorb cushioning. So everybody had their cushioning technologies at the time, and they had to make them visible. Nike made that famous with the Air Max. And so, and you can see that on the 993s here. There's this section of absorb cushioning, and the 998 was the first shoe to incorporate that. Then they went to the 999s, and then you're back up, and you're not going to go to 1,000. So they started over again, and went to the 990 and called it the V2. And I think that was those are the ones that are famous for. I think Steve Jobs has been shown wearing those shoes. And then they started back up again. So they went to the 991, 992, and 993. That was all in the 2000s. These are the 993s, and they looked very similar. All of these shoes, the biggest changes that they made is they gradually changed the toe box and kind of widened that out a little bit. When they switched to this absorb, this has stayed pretty constant. And the 991, 992, and 993 look, unless you really look closely at the features in the back of the midsole, they look very, very similar. And then around 2010, I believe, they switched back to not incrementing the 993 to a 994, say, and they went back to just the 990, and then they versioned it up. So they already had the original, they had a version 2, so they went to a version 3, 990 version 4, and then the 990 version 5. And these have been around. That's what these are. These have been around for several years now. And in a lot of ways look a lot like the 993s. There are some differences, and we can talk a little bit about some of those. But that's been kind of the progression. So it's they'll say that these are the V5s, but there's actually been 13 different models over the years of a continuous line of shoes. It's just the naming conventions have changed. The great thing about this line of shoes is the fit, feel, and function of the shoe has really stayed the same over all of these years. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why so many people love this shoe. It's one of the reasons why I love this shoe and kept coming back to this shoe, especially the fit. They were built, I believe that all of these are built on the same exact last. They did change, like I said, they did change the upper some. So the newer ones do have a little wider toe box than the original, which actually was helpful for me, but all of them fit. And for me, over the years, I didn't get my first pair until the 1990s when I made enough money I could afford $100 running shoes. And actually, the 997s were shoes I ran my first marathon in, and it was great because I trained and successfully completed the marathon, no injuries, and I just had great luck with the shoes. So I ended up buying 2 pairs of those. I went to the 998s. I had 2 pairs of those. I've probably had about a dozen different 990s over the years. And then, like a lot of runners, I went away from them for a little bit because there were so many good running shoes on the market in the 1990s. Nike Air Maxes were coming out. The early Air Maxes were great shoes. Even though they weren't a stability shoe, they actually worked for me quite well. And then you had other lines that are famous today, the Asics Keanu, the Brooks Beast, the Brooks Trance. A bunch of shoes came out during that period. And so I did, start to experiment around with a number of different shoe models and different shoe companies, and had great luck with a lot of them. But I think a lot of you have found over the years that you find your favorite model of shoes, and then just when you think you have the perfect pair of shoes, they change it. And the fit, they no longer fit, or they dig into your arches, or they were now too firm or too soft, or something's changed in them fundamentally, and you got to go find new shoes. And that's what was happening to me after the 998s. Is I would find some great shoes, and then I'd have to keep changing them. And so around 2000, I went back and I got the 991s, and yep, they fit just like they used to fit, and yep, it was the same feel, and I could run in them, and I wasn't getting injured. And I could put the miles in I needed to put in, and they looked a little bit older than some of the other ones because they're one of the only shoes using leather still. But the fact that they fit and they still did the job they're supposed to do was great. And I kind of stuck through these through a lot of the 2000s. Finally went away from them. I did find some other shoes that I really liked and kind of left them again, but I came back to them once again during COVID. So in 2020, I had been running in a pair of the New Balance Bongos, this was actually the second pair I bought, and when I was supplementing them, they worked great, but these were my only fresh running shoes left. They're a 4mm drop, and they're definitely softer than the 990s or other stability running shoes I've been running in, and I just, for my body, running in these as my daily trainer, as much as I loved running in them, was not working for me. I was having Achilles and calf problems, and then COVID hit, and I'm stuck in lockdown like many of you are, and one of the few things I can do is go for runs, and I wasn't able to go for runs, and luckily, I bought these and had them in my closet, and I really bought these as more of a, as kind of a buy, like, hey, I used to run in these were great shoes. When I buy a pair, I'll just wear them mostly for casual, but run in them occasionally. And so they were still pretty fresh, and I was having Achilles and calf strain problems, and I started wearing these again, and I was able to get through that and run through that whole spring and summer when COVID came, when everything was in lockdown, the stores weren't open. I did not want to just mail order some shoes because I didn't know what was going to fit or what would work for me, because I was having injury problems. And these, like all my earlier 990s, were keeping me healthy, right? They kept me from getting injured. I was able to recover, and they were stable enough. They have a kind of a more traditional heel toe drop, so they weren't aggravating my Achilles. And they really helped me get through COVID. The stores opened up, and during the summer I was able to go and try on different shoes, and found the New Balance 860s work quite well. A little bit lighter, a little more modern looking, and so I am doing a lot more of my miles now in shoes like these. But I continue to run in the 993s even after I bought the 860s, because just to kind of get a different shoe, and they were working great. So I ended up putting probably 500 plus miles in these, so today I still have the shoes. I haven't been running in them as much. I did get the V5s. My intention was to run a little bit in these and use them kind of like as kind of that safety shoe, like I did with the 993s. I found they have gained weight over the years. So the original 990 is about 13 and a half ounces. The 993, and this is size 11 and a half. So I'm going to give you higher weights than what you're typically seeing for a size 9 shoe that's usually reported. So 13 and a half ounces, 14 and a half ounces for the 993s, and about 15 and a half ounces for the 990 V5s. And for this one, for whatever reason, was starting to notice that weight. That 1 ounce just made a difference, and they weren't as flexible in the forefoot as the 993s and some of the earlier models. So I still really like them. They fit great. They feel great. They actually, the heel, the firmness is really good. But I'm not running in them, so I'm mostly wearing them for casual now. But they are a great fitting, high quality shoe. Even the current one today. But I found these are better, for at least for me, for running in. And the V5 is more marketed as a lifestyle shoe, while the 993 originally was still intended to be a running shoe. So I've had great luck with these shoes, a great personal experience. The fit, form, and function has stayed constant. I wish running shoe companies, including New Balance and others, would kind of take this lesson of very slowly evolving the shoes and not making these big changes that they sometimes make, because once you find a shoe that fits, you want to stay with it, and it has that same feel when you're running them. I'm finding, and I may make a video in the future that that's still happening today, and for me, for somebody who needs a real stability shoe, I'm finding my choices are becoming very, very thin right now. Anyways, it's been a great line of shoes. You can buy these today. The future of the shoe, I would say, I have no idea what New Balance plans to do. They've really kept this version out for a while. I wish on the next version, the only changes I would make is to try to get some weight out of it. Because for whatever reason, as I've been running in these just got just a little too heavy. And I think there's things that they've added. The midsole's got a little more bulk than it needs. They've got plastic straps here that, they need to tie this in with something firm, but it doesn't need to be a heavy, bulky plastic. And then I think they could take some out of the outsole, like with, the more modern running shoes. They kind of pull where you're not hitting the ground. You could maintain the durability of these shoes, because they have great durability, and lighten them up a little bit. And it'd be great to have these shoes out, take 1 or 2 ounces out of them, and make them, even if they're considered more of a lifestyle shoe, people can wear them in the gym. They can occasionally do runs in them, and they're still a great shoe for that. And so that would be my, if New Balance was going to make changes to it, that's what I would say the shoe should go next. Having the classic look and feel and quality, made in the USA. You can't go wrong with that. I think it's the only shoe made in the USA currently. There might be 1 or 2 other models, but it's pretty rare. So I think that's everything I wanted to say. Wonderful pair of shoes. Just wanted to give it a tribute to this great line of running shoes, and we'll see how it goes. I may come out with a few more videos. Until next time, take care and stay running.